Hello everyone, my name is Heather and welcome to the channel Bookables. Today I am going to be talking about books that are heartwarming. Books that just make you feel, I want to say ooey gooey, but not ooey gooey, that just really warm up your heart, that just have a great kind of message in them, that have great feelings of friendship, of camaraderie, of togetherness, just give you that warm-hearted feeling. So I picked about 7 or 8 books that I think give me that feeling. Hopefully they'll give you that feeling. Hopefully you haven't read some of these, and hopefully I can recommend you some ones that are just great to read when you're in that mood that you just need a book that will kind of lift you up. Either way, I hope these will be just that for you, books that are heartwarming.
Grew 3 sizes that day. And then, the true meaning of Christmas.
So first up, I have one that I read this year that I cannot stop talking about. I talk about it all the time, and it is quintessentially a heartwarming read at its finest, and that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. This is an adult fantasy novel, but very light on the fantasy. I would say like barely fantasy. So in this book, we follow a character named Linus, who is like a magical caseworker. His job is to go to all the orphanages, the magical orphanages, and make sure all the magical youth are being taken care of, making sure of the foster care home owner is doing well, and things like that. He's never really got attached to the kids or the job at all. He just does his job and that's it. But then he gets a super secret top mission, if you will. People decide to send him to this house like in the middle of like an island, like in the Cerulean Sea. He can't talk about it with anybody. He's never heard of this house before. His job is to go there and check. So he goes there, you know, and he's gonna spend like a month there, a lot longer than he's ever spent with magical youth. And of course, as he's there, he starts to fall in love with these kids and maybe the foster care, the orphanage's owner, and it's just so heartwarming. You will fall in love with these children. We have like a 500-year-old gnome named, I forget her name, but we have like a garden sprite. We have a little wyvern. We have a like big green kind of blob, think of like Monsters Inc. And then we have the devil's son himself, Lucifer, aka Lucy. And it's just so heartwarming. If you need a book that'll make you smile from literally ear to ear, look no further. This one will do just that for you. It'll make you smile, it'll make you have all of the warm heart feelings, and it'll just make you feel just so much better. Then we have a classic. I know, shocker. I'm not a big classic reader. I've always said that. I think when I first started this channel, I felt very ashamed of myself for that, because I felt like you couldn't be a reader unless you loved classics or read a lot of them. But I've changed my tune on that. Every reader's different. I'm just not a classic person. But I do read a few here and there, and one that I've read that I love, that is a heartwarming read for sure, is Little Woman by Louisa May Alcott. Sorry, it's kind of like a little shiny, but either way, I read this a couple years ago and fell in love with it. I'm sure you've heard a lot about it. They've adapted it many times, most recently a couple years ago, and the adaptation was really great. This is about the March sisters. We have 4 March sisters, and I think it takes place in the 1800s or early 1900s. I forget exactly, but either way, you follow Jo, and she is she the oldest March sister? I'm not sure, but either way, it's all about sisterhood and family and just beautifulness. I love this book. It is so heartwarming. It will also make you cry. That's just gonna be honest, but the majority of it is so heartwarming. If you're like me and you're very skeptical of classics and the language that comes with them, because that's with me, I'm like, oh gosh, this one is very easy to read, very much so. In fact, it's made me inspired to maybe read Anne of Green Gables, perhaps. If you would recommend that, let me know. But this book is just, if you want good sisterhood vibes, good family vibes, good like just closeness and togetherness vibes, this one is perfect for that. Next up, I have A Man Called Uve by Frederick Bachman. I read this like 4 or 5 years ago, and this is a book that is equally heartwarming and equally sad. So I'm actually planning to do a video of like sad books soon, and this one is on both lists because I just really feel like it fits both. It is heartwarming, yes, but it is also sad. So this is about a man named Uve, and this book takes place in Sweden. Frederick Bachman is a very famous Swedish author, one of my favorite authors, honestly. I've read all of his books, love all of them. But this one is about a man named Uve who is very grumpy. He's a grumpy old man. He's lost his wife, so he's just kind of best left alone at home. He doesn't want to be disturbed. He doesn't want to talk to people. But then he has new neighbors move into his neighborhood, and they are a chatty young couple, and they have 2 daughters, and they start talking to Uwe more, and he's reluctantly coming out of his shell, and it is just so heartwarming. You will fall in love with Uwe. You learn more about his life, how he got to be where he is, how he met his wife, how he lost his wife, and things like that. It is just a phenomenal book. It's one of my favorite Fredrik Backman books. In fact, I think this is the one that like has really blown up. I have watched the Swedish adaptation and enjoyed it. I do know that there's supposed to be an adaptation, in English one at least. I think Tom Hanks is supposed to play Uwe, so that's be interesting. But I love this one. Gosh, it's just amazing. You will just... Uwe's like the grumpiest man ever, but you will fall in love with this grumpy old man. Like, think of kind of like Carl from Up, if you will.
In need of any assistance today, sir?
No.
I could help you cross the street.
No.
I could help you cross your yard.
No.
I could help you cross your porch.
No.
The Pixar movie Up, like he's very grumpy at first, but then you see him soften over time and you fall in love with him, and that is literally Uwe. This is a great book that is just about somebody coming out of their shell and things like that. I highly, highly recommend it. Next up, I have a historical read, and that is The Kitchen Front by Jennifer Ryan. I read this last year on a whim because honestly the cover drew me in. I love the gingham. I love just everything about it. This is a book that takes place in World War II and takes place specifically in Britain, and it's all about rationing because in World War II, rations were everywhere. You could only get a certain number of things. You had to survive on a certain type of food and stuff like that. And it was very, very hard for a lot of women because they had to supply for their kids, and they were like, unless you didn't have like a victory garden when they called it that, you just really had to really skim. So this one follows a whole bunch of different women, and basically there's this radio show they listen to, and there's a competition that comes on, and it's the Kitchen Friends holding a cooking contest, and the grand prize is a job as the program's first ever female co-host. So basically in this competition, each of these women that enter and get selected, I think there's 4 women, they have to cook like an appetizer, main course, and a dessert, all using rations, because that's what the show is about, is how to like help you use your rations correctly. And we follow 4 women that are very different scopes of life and why they need this job and things like that. But the way they come together is just so heartwarming. It's got great sisterhood vibes. I'm really big into that apparently, but I just really enjoy that. I love seeing women come together. It's great sisterhood vibes. It's also very realistic on how hard it was because a lot of their husbands had to go off to war, or they didn't know if their husbands were going to come back, and they have to provide for their family, and so they need this job, but they come together, and it is just so amazing. This is a book I don't hear barely anyone talk about, but it is just so heartwarming. Next up, we have a romance novel, probably my only romance on this list, and that is Very Sincerely Yours by Carrie Winfrey. This is her 3rd book in her Not Like the Movie series. Is that right? Or Waiting for Tom Hanks series? I'm not sure. Either way, this is about a character, I forget her name, but she works at a vintage toy store, and at the beginning of the book, she's very invested in her relationship. Like, she does everything. She's left her friends, her family to be involved in this relationship. So one night when he comes to her for dinner, she thinks he's going to propose. He's like, no, we need to break up and you need to move out. And so she's like, oh my gosh, she doesn't know who she is outside of this relationship. Her identity was this relationship, which is, but either way, she goes back to her old friend, and she's like, I have nowhere to go. And of course they take her in, and there she starts watching kind of like, imagine like this PBS program like Mr. Rogers / Jim Henson guy named Teddy, who does a children's show in the local area with like puppets and things like that. And she decides, you know what, I'm just going to email him for advice and things like that, because, well, I don't know, what else have I got to lose? Like, I'm at the bottom of my barrel right now. And so they start an email conversation back and forth, and it's very kind of a la You've Got Mail.
You think we should meet?
Meet?
And the reason why I think it's so heartwarming is just everything about it, honestly. Like, this romance is a very cheesy romance, but it's just so freaking heartwarming. Like, they both come from like she works at a vintage toy store. He works as like a children's TV show host and things like that, and I don't know why, it just screams heartwarming to me. The romance was even heartwarming of how they got together and how they had this great friendship first and wondering if they should meet in real life, and I loved it. Again, another underrated book I don't hear a ton of people talk about, but I loved it. If you're looking for a romance book that's like romance, yes, but heartwarming as well, you got it covered in this one. So the next one I have is Evie Drake Starts Over. This is another kind of romance read, but I would really classify it as like a woman's fiction. And this is all about Evie, who at the beginning of the book is married, and she is not happy in her marriage at all. It's not abusive by any means, but it's controlling, and she wants out. And so actually the night that she's packing up her bags to leave, what do you know, the police come knocking on her door, tell her that her husband has died in a car accident. And of course she's shocked, but she is, I guess, not as sad as she should be because she doesn't love this man. She hasn't loved him in quite some time. And her small town that she lives in, because it's like kind of a northern town, everyone thinks that she is suffering so tragically, that she's so sad, and so she has to kind of play this part of being sad, when in reality she's like, I'm happy to be moved on, like I'm okay. And from there she meets this guy that is a baseball star, and he's like a famous pitcher, but he has the yips, meaning that he can't pitch anymore. There's no physical reason why he can't pitch, it's in his mind pretty much. We all, like, his headspace is messed up. And so he decides to stay with Evie in like her extra room, and they form a friendship, and it's just heartwarming. This is a small town book. I love small town books, we all know this, and this one had such small town vibes. Evie had a great best friend and was very close with his children, and I loved the romance in this, how it was very much a friendship for a majority of it, to realize their feelings, but they were both adults about it, and it's just heartwarming on heartwarming. Yes, it does sound sad. It's all about, you know, quintessentially a widow, but it's about literally her starting over her life and figuring out who she is and things like that. And I couldn't get enough of it. The last book I have is kind of similar to Evie Drake Starts Over, and that is Eleanor, Oliphant is Completely Fine. I read this again a few years ago. So this follows Eleanor Oliphant, who is very struggling with social skills. She perhaps maybe is on the spectrum. I don't think the book ever speculates like if for sure she is or not. So I don't want to say for sure because that's not my to judge at all, but she's definitely struggling with social skills. She doesn't talk to a lot of people at her work. She kind of goes home and has a phone call with her mom every single day, and that's about it. Then she meets Raymond, who is an IT guy in her department, and they strike up a friendship. And even in this thing, it says ultimately it's Raymond's big heart that will help Eleanor find the way to repair her own profoundly damaged one. If she does, she'll learn that she too is capable of finding friendship and even love after all. It says smart, warm, and uplifting, and that is exactly what I would classify this book. Eleanor really struggles as socially, and I think a lot of us can attest to that. Each person is very, very different when it comes to that. I am very, very good socially, but some other people are not, and that's totally understandable. My son is, you know, he's on the spectrum, so he's has a really hard time with social situations. So, you know, the fact that this book is all about her and meeting people that understand her, that care about her, that accept her for who she is just phenomenal. It's a great book. Love, 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 love this one. So it's just a small, quick list of books that are just heartwarming, that'll get you all on your feels, that'll make you smile, that'll make your heart just kind of warm. If you have any of your own favorite heartwarming reads, please leave them in the comments below. I am always on the search for some because I love that feeling of just warmness and happiness in a book, for sure. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.